You know, free agency is going on, and while everyone else is just covering moves going on right now, I think we should take a look back at how we got here. I was originally gonna look at all my favorite free agency moves from my time as an NBA fan, but then when we talk about Kevin Durant's move, we should really discuss how that has led to where we are today. And it goes down a really cool domino effect, and that has led to these two potential super teams we have now. So let's look at the move that everyone hated Kevin Durant for, signing with the Warriors.
The news again coming in moments ago, Kevin Durant heading to the Golden State Warriors. How are you viewing this move from Durant?
Well, I'm viewing it as the weakest move I've ever seen from a superstar.
July 4th, 2016 is one of those days in the NBA that you kind of just know exactly what you were doing. So, where were you July 4th, 2016? I personally was waking up and decided to check my phone because that's what everyone does. By the way, I didn't have any forms of social media, so all I had was the ESPN and Bleacher Report apps. And I look at the notification and it said Kevin Durant was taking his talents to Golden State, the very team he was one win away from eliminating and going on to the finals. So let's rewind farther back a few days, where the reported teams that Durant would sign with were Golden State, the Thunder, San Antonio, Washington, and Boston. I think, I don't know, I was in middle school, so let's just look back at those teams and eliminate them one by one so we can see that there were only really two options he was going to go to. Eliminating these teams one by one should be pretty easy, but let's start with Boston. Boston, they were just a good team at the time. They had no real star to pair with KD because we didn't know Isaiah Thomas would average like 30 points that season. So why would he go to a pretty much worse situation if OKC is already better? San Antonio, the Spurs, they had Popovich and Kawhi and actually won 67 games that season that the Warriors won 73. So that seemed pretty good, right? But sadly, no one really wants to sign with the Spurs because they don't have good marketability. And honestly, that situation isn't even that much better than OKC since the Thunder beat them in 6 in the playoffs just a few months before. So, also, Popovich, some players don't like playing with him, and he doesn't really like players with egos, so I can understand that. Now, Washington, they had a decent case. They were in Durant's hometown. They had a young Bradley Beal, who might be an up-and-coming star, and an actual star at the time in John Wall. So, but was it really better than OKC? If you couldn't win with Westbrook's style, how do you expect John Wall will be any different? They kind of play the same, so it's not a guaranteed upgrade. Now it comes down to the two teams that actually had a chance. OKC, the Thunder, they pretty much have the best pitch. Hey, we were one win away from making the finals and very well could have won it all. We can get another piece in the offseason and we can win it all next year. But they've been doing that for the past 5 years, so is there an option that has a guaranteed better situation? Sadly for Thunder fans, yes there was, and it was an obvious pick too if you don't mind being hated by everyone. That leaves us with the team Durant ultimately chose, Golden State. Golden State was the only real choice other than re-signing. They had the perfect pitch as they were a finals team and went to 7 games with LeBron. They have the dream player to play with since he plays amazing with everyone, with or without the ball. A 73-win record-breaking team. If you can handle the hatred, why not sign there? So Durant signs with the Warriors, meaning I and many others on the West Coast wake up shocked as he really did it. We all didn't think he'd do it, but he signed with a team that took him out of the playoffs. Now, as you may all know, there were many of the same reactions, and here's a little compilation I've put together of NBA fans and Thunder fans finding out the news that Durant signed with the Warriors.
I hope have you never win anything in your entire life of the NBA? Ever! This free agency stuff is getting out of hand. It's like an episode on HBO, and then no, you wanted your own HBO special. You wanted to make everyone wait. I had to check out the shower every 2-3 seconds. Oh, Kevin Durant. Oh, Kevin Durant. Oh, Kevin Durant signed with the Warriors.
I love you, Durant. You're better than this, man. Oh my God, you're so much better than this, dog. You're
If I could rip that, it might rip. I might be able to rip it. Oh wait, I'm not strong enough. Plan B, let's go. Rip it, trash. It's all trash. You're all trash.
Now that we got that dark tale of the NBA free agency over, let's look at some of the fun ones that were basically caused by this. So, Dwayne Wade went to the Bulls. Yeah, y'all remember that? That crazy super team with Wade, Butler, and Rondo? Don't pretend like you didn't call that a super team, since I vividly remember people calling it that when it happened. If I remember right, it was either stay with Miami or move on to a new team with his friend Jimmy Butler. Jimmy and Wade ended up just carrying the Bulls, and everyone complained how Rondo was useless. Fast forward through the season and into the playoffs, and the Bulls are up 2-0 against the one-seeded Isaiah Thomas-led Celtics. This team is looking dangerous. What could possibly make the Eastern Conference Finals? But that didn't happen.
Said on TNT's Inside the NBA that if he was healthy, Chicago would have swept Boston. Stephen A., is he right?
Hell no, he's not right.
Now, all of a sudden, it's, we can't win without Rondo, he's super important, as the Bulls inevitably got reverse swept and lost 4 straight games. That season, D-Wade fans would probably like to forget, as they were the 8th seed and fell pretty short of expectations. Also, Dwayne Wade said everyone but Jimmy was lazy and nearly died to Bobby Portis, who was on that team, and told D-Wade that he works way harder than Dwayne and to never question his work ethic. This would result in the team splitting up and is the perfect transition to the 2018 offseason, where this happened.
This Cavs team has depth, but how much did they improve?
Well, I think they improved tremendously. Let me say this. Dwayne Wade supposedly is on the downside of his career. Still averaged 18 points per game last year. This brother can play. He's a 3-time champion, former league finals, NBA finals MVP.
So Cleveland signed Dwayne Wade and D Rose as well as other veterans to pair with LeBron, and this would prove to be terrible as these guys sucked and would be traded mid-season, and boom, Wade is back on the Heat and announces he will play one more season after that. Meaning that when we look at Dwayne Wade, we will all block out those 2 years he wasn't with the Heat. Now, if you weren't watching basketball back in 2018, you may be wondering, wait, how did Dwayne Wade, LeBron, and Kyrie not work out? Cleveland still had Kyrie, right? And to that, I'd say, you are making me feel really old and are probably in middle school right now. So just shut up. Roll the clip.
You're not going back to the finals, Kyrie! Kyrie! You're not going! Listen to this roster. D Rose, LeBron, Isaiah, LeBron, come on, you can't beat me! What are you doing? Kyrie!
So there you go, you 12-year-old. The case was Kyrie wanted to be the man on his team and couldn't wait 1 year for LeBron to leave. Which, who could blame him, since without LeBron that team was so bad. And I wouldn't want his leftovers when he most likely leaves that offseason. So he gets shipped to Boston, as he wanted to go to Boston or the Timberwolves, were the main two I remember. But Boston sent over Isaiah Thomas and Jay Crowder basically, and I think draft picks, but I don't know, I'm not going to double check. But Kyrie goes to Boston and the Celtics won that trade. Kind of. Oh, why am I saying kind of? I'll get into that later, but for now, remember Dwayne Wade on the Cavs? Well, you may be thinking, wait, so it's just Jimmy by himself again? Why? Well, the Bulls would shock the world with this deal on draft night. Roll the clip.
The Chicago Bulls have traded Jimmy Butler to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Zach LaVine, Chris Dunn, and the number 7 pick in this year's draft.
Yeah, so the Bulls got Chris Dunn and Lauri Markkanen, and what did the Wolves get? Well, they get a whopping 1 playoff appearance, ending their playoff drought since 2004. But they were the 4 seed, and Jimmy went down. And don't worry, Andrew Wiggins made it his personal mission to make it as hard as possible to stay in the playoffs. So Jimmy Butler rushes back, and they pushed the Rockets to a whopping 5 games. And guess what happens next? The Wolves also get to be on the butt end of one of the greatest stories of all time that I like to call Jimmy and the Third Stringers, which will get its own video soon. But now the Bulls are lonely until Zach LaVine got traded there and would get overpaid apparently, and sadly couldn't come to Sactown. Moving on, Jimmy would force his way to Philly, almost beat the champion Raptors as they were a Kawhi bounce away, and then he'd go chill with Miami and bring the culture there. But wait, you may be thinking, how the hell are the Raptors champions? They were getting owned by LeBron, right? Before we get into that, I mentioned LeBron, so let's talk about him. LeBron had one of the greatest carry jobs that the world has ever seen, with the help of Kyrie's Celtics being injured, and ultimately J.R. Smith and the Warriors ran him out of the East, and LeBron went to chill in LA, because if you're gonna lose to Golden State, at least you're not losing in Cleveland.
Breaking news, LeBron is a Laker.
LeBron James is a Los Angeles Laker for what ought to occupy the final act of his NBA story.
4-year, $154 million a max deal. That's what he can sign in L.A. Likely an opt-out after 3 years that could put him back in free agency or negotiate a new deal.
It was a wild notification I see on my phone coming out of the shower. LeBron signed with the Lakers. And yes, I know all signs pointed to he was going to sign there. But I was pretty split on the decision since I don't like the Lakers. I just don't. But that's because I'm a Kings fan. But I love LeBron. And I wanted him to go to Philly. And I feel like he could have probably won 2 championships there. But he's on the Lakers now. And he was expected to take them to at least the Western Conference Finals after what he did last year. But we soon found out that the Lakers kinda sucked when he wasn't on the floor. And that should be obvious, but we'll get into that in a bit. But you know why he was only expected to go to the Western Conference Finals? Well...
Do you think this move is good or bad for the association?
It's neither. I mean, if I have to say which one it is, it's good. Other teams need to get their game up.
Oh yeah, that trade happened. DeMarcus Cousins tore his Achilles that season with the Pelicans, and then he decided to sign the veteran minimum with the already super team Golden State Warriors. Why though? He obviously had better deals, right? Well, his idea was that he can show how good he can still be on a winning team and then get paid next offseason while getting a ring at the same time. Genius plan in my opinion. But before we get into what stopped his genius plan, other than the injury in Game 2 of Round 1. Do you know why the Warriors felt the need to sign the former best center in the league? Well, the year prior, this happened.
Paul agreeing to a sign-in trade to the Rockets.
Chris Paul signed with the Rockets, shocking the world after both the Rockets and Clippers disappointed the year before. Well, technically the Rockets didn't actually disappoint. But when you consider Kawhi was injured in Game 6 and would most likely miss Game 7, they disappointed. But Chris Paul, with James Harden on the same team, brought about many questions. How would 2 ball-dominant players coexist? They both love dribbling the ball. But they ended up being better than Golden State that year. In the regular season, at least. But in the playoffs, the Rockets took a 3-2 lead over the Warriors and were 1 win away. But Chris Paul got hurt, and the Rockets missed 27 straight threes, so they ultimately lost. And side note, can we stop this? The Rockets would have won fully healthy, because the Warriors weren't even fully healthy. Iguodala was out, so they couldn't run their death lineup. But when Iggy did play, the Warriors had a 2-1 lead in the series, with their 2 wins being blowouts. Then Iggy went down, and the Warriors lost Game 4 by like 1, and Game 5 by like a few points as well. So if Iggy was healthy, it's Warriors in 5, but I digress. Chris Paul would try again with the Rockets, and this time in 2019, they'd find themselves down 3-2, and somehow lose despite Kevin Durant missing Game 6. So there was a trade that had to be made, kind of. But before we get into that, let's talk about Jimmy Butler's Sixers and the Golden State Warriors, and why they were not able to hold up that championship trophy.
Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green going north, and DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a protected 2019 first-round pick going back to San Antonio.
Kawhi Leonard forced his way out of San Antonio as Greg Popovich and him clashed, and boom, Kawhi is on the Raptors, and then he torched the playoffs and kept DeMarcus Cousins' foolproof plan from working. And as you all know, Kawhi wins it all, and he's a free agent now. Will he stay? I don't know, but let's cut back to everyone's favorite team, the dreaded Warriors. So obviously Golden State couldn't keep everyone, and KD looked like he wanted out throughout the season with clashes with Draymond and just looking disconnected from the team. So Durant would shock the world a second time in his career. Roll the clip.
Breaking news on the Jump Free Agency special. Oh yes, nobody is waiting till 6 o'clock Eastern. Adrian Wojnarowski reporting that Kevin Durant is in fact headed to Brooklyn to join Kyrie Irving and DeAndre Jordan.
Now, why is Kyrie here? Well, him and the Celtics, despite promising to re-sign at the beginning of the year, kinda had some problems as the team was dysfunctional and Kyrie himself was going through some issues mentally at home, and Boston was not having any of it, basically running him out of town. And earlier, him and Kevin Durant discussed teaming up in New York, as a clip in the All-Star game showed that they wanted to go to New York. And Knicks fans will feel pain once again watching this, as they didn't go to the Knicks like every Knicks fan was hyping up getting Zion, Kyrie, and KD. Yes, we will obviously take 10 seconds to laugh at the Knicks.
Yo lo mareé.
But yeah, they went to Brooklyn, and you may be thinking, since the Warriors aren't nearly as scary anymore, what is our favorite group of playoff chokers gonna do now that their roadblock is gone? Well, common knowledge would be to run it back, but the great Daryl Morey knows better than you, and this happens instead.
Yeah, it's kind of it's an awkward timeline of events, Kenny, that led to the Thunder trading their franchise player, the guy that had spent 11 years in Oklahoma City. And it really started back with Paul George's trade request. Obviously, everything changed at that moment.
So instead of obviously running it back with a system he knows works against human teams, he decides to try full small ball with Westbrook instead of Chris Paul. Now, we questioned the Chris Paul fit, and believe me, we really questioned this one. And in the bubble, we were proven correct, as this would prove to be the last straw for Houston, as they would end up blowing it up, which results in one of the final super teams that we will discuss in the end. But you may be wondering, hey, what happened to Westbrook and why did he leave the Thunder? Well, you see, after the Thunder lost in the first round and we all saw some impressive triple-doubles, they traded for a star who wanted out, and also played a prank on the Lakers and would end up staying with OKC and having his MVP campaign year.
Yeah, Ramona Shelburne is all over this story. Paul George has been traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder. We are still trying to determine what the pieces are.
There was another super team formed in the summer of 2017, and that was only good against the Warriors and no one else. The Thunder were looking real dangerous with Westbrook, Paul George, and Melo. Then they lost to a rookie and Ricky Rubio and Joe Ingles. So Carmelo Anthony left, and then it was Russell and Paul George, which worked really well during the regular season. Paul George actually had an MVP campaign, which people called MVPG. Then he got injured, which kind of nerfed him in the playoffs. So now they face the Portland Trail Blazers. And this looks good because the Blazers, they've also been disappointing the last 2 years as they lost to the Super Team Warriors and then they got swept by Anthony Davis and the Pelicans. But then sadly this happened.
To send the Thunder home. Lillard, long range three, and it's good! At the buzzer! Damian Lillard! Are you kidding me?
Damian Lillard essentially blew up the Thunder as Paul George would quietly demand a trade. Where to, you are probably asking? Well, now I just have to question your memory as this wasn't that long ago, but I'll give you the answer. Right after we look at our friend, the champion Raptors. The Raptors won after KD and Klay get injured and beat Steph, who I think had something wrong with his hand, but I don't know. But they beat Steph Curry, and you can clearly tell by my tone of voice, I am not salty at all. But Raptors won it all, and most superstars stay with their championship winning team. Kawhi is different though. He wanted so little coverage on the situation as possible. But everyone knows that's impossible when at the time you are seen by many as the best player in the world. It was so intense it felt like he waited till the end of the offseason. But really he just waited like maybe a week, maybe 2, which was normal until this free agency since everyone was signing first day. Eventually it came down to 3 teams, the Clippers, Lakers, and Raptors. Now, I truly believed in my heart that he would not have ever signed with the Lakers to create Warriors 2.0. But even worse, since it's the Lakers, and the most accoladed team of all time. So I wrote them off and fully believed that he would re-sign with Toronto. But then the meeting with Toronto happened.
Okay, take a look at how CP24, the 24-hour news channel in Toronto, decided to cover his arrival. They tracked the MLSC plane as it landed, arrived on the tarmac. Then you see a couple of people come out of the plane.
I thought that he would stay with Toronto since there were a lot of incentives and they treat him like Jesus Christ himself over there, and still do from what I've heard. But at like 11 at night Pacific time, he made his decision as the Clippers stayed the most quiet and signed him. How, you may ask? All they have is Beverly. And well, Kawhi told them to go after a certain player, and you all know how this goes.
I'm a fun guy. I just can't give you a whole spiel.
What it do, baby? We got Kawhi Leonard! We're down. What? We got Paul George!
That's right, Paul George goes to the Clippers, and the Clippers look like the favorites in the West. Sadly, that didn't happen, and people like me and the person who made this edit looked really dumb after the Nuggets and bubble happened. But the Kawhi saga was so crazy, I downloaded Twitter for like 4 days just so I could be notified as quickly as possible. Fast forward, and we've almost come full circle as the Lakers win the championship and the Rockets gave up as Westbrook and Harden did not work. So Westbrook gets shipped for John Wall in 2020 offseason. And what happens with Harden? We have officially come full circle. As after the super team era came to a close for a year, it arrives again as this was announced near the start of the 2021 season.
The Nets. The Nets? Look. James Harden went to the Nets. Yeah. So it's James, KD, and Kyrie? Yeah. I'm 36. I'm 36.
Now that Harden is with Kevin Durant and Kyrie, and sadly they lose to the Bucks due mostly to injury and Kevin Durant's huge foot, I expect them to dominate this upcoming year, and since they look terrifying. But just like the Warriors super team era, there were teams trying to catch them, and this time it looks like the Lakers are trying to catch the Nets as they traded everything but LeBron and AD for a third star, who just recently led the Wizards' poverty franchise to the playoffs.
Right. How much help does LeBron need at this point, bro? I've never seen somebody that has run away from the grind of basketball.
Now, as of now, I am still very skeptical of how this will turn out. And by my definition of a super team, yeah, it's a super team. Not a good fitted one, but a super team. Lucky for Laker fans, at the time of this writing, they have signed lots of quality veterans for the team, like Trevor Ariza, Dwight Howard again for the third time, and Carmelo Anthony. And they look like they might actually be really, really good. But now it's time to wait and see. But when you think about it, all of this happened because Kevin Durant went to Golden State, and players felt that they can truly do what they want. We truly live in the era of player empowerment, and I love it. Just to recap, basically how Kevin Durant's move in 2016 led to where we are today. Here's a graphic, and thank you for finishing the video. Please like and subscribe, even leave a comment if you feel like it, and I will see you all next time.